Here's where we're going next with the U.S. Iran future and the memorandum of understanding. It's hit a bit of a snag as Vice President Vance has now postponed his trip to Switzerland for talks that were scheduled to begin today. Now, the Iranians also not in attendance. This just days after President Trump did sign an agreement that opened the window for these negotiations. I want to bring in South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman. Congressman, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Glad to be with you, Cheryl.
Yeah, well, so President Trump wrote on Truth Social this: we're going to play out the 60 days. They get no money, not 10 cents. I want to get your reaction to where we are right now.
Well, first of all, I think the public has to realize the MOU is just a memorandum of understanding on paper. What Iran is going to have to realize, they've got to come to the table. Their country is pretty well decimated. If they don't understand that President Trump means what he says and will follow through, particularly as it relates to having nuclear weapons, it's not going to happen. And so I'm glad that the Vice President cancels his trip to Switzerland. If they're not showing up, what is there to discuss? And they're not. Iran is not operating from a posture of strength. The country's pretty well decimated. Now it can take the wrong turn if the leaders who are crazy decide to do that. But it's not going to end well for Iran. And the president, when has he's always backed up everything he said.
Well, no, and he's been very clear, and he has done this. I mean, you've taken out 3 levels of the regime, from the top down, and now you've got, the Navy destroyed, their missiles are destroyed. I mean, they don't have much except for these small boats, and so to have a weakened Iran, maybe it is taking Cargill, and we're going to have to see where this goes, certainly as these negotiations play out. And many officials, U.S. officials, have confirmed that Israel and Hezbollah have agreed to renew this ceasefire after the talks were put on pause. But do you think that this holds up the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah? And how important do you think is the ceasefire between these two adversaries to the broader deal? Because the Iranians keep using that as an excuse to back out.
Well, as we've seen, Netanyahu has been in favor of the 60-day moratorium if it works. But, with the 4 Israelis that they killed in Lebanon, it's not a good start to something that should be they should be listening to what's happened to their country so far. And Israel is a key player. It's our only democracy in the Middle East. And, Israel has got every right to do what they have to do to protect their country. But you wonder the thought process of leaders who are doing this, and if they continue to close the Straits of Hormuz, to bomb the ships, to prevent oil, their lifeline is going to be cut off completely, as well as destroyed by the air. And again, the president means what he says and says what he means.
There you go. Well, look, oil has fallen on all of this. In fact, prices are sitting at about 3-month lows right now on hopes that the Strait of Hormuz is going to not just open, but stay open. We know gas prices are headed down, but the hawks are concerned that we didn't finish the job. And the Iranians do the midterms will put pressure on the administration. That puts pressure on you and your colleagues as we move into the midterms. And the issue of affordability is front and center for most Americans. How do you address that? How do you message that right now, Congressman?
Well, first of all, if you look at the gas prices coming down, and the president, we were all with him during the Medal of Honor ceremony, and he mentioned that gas prices, oil prices are falling like a rock, and they are. And that's, with the question of affordability, that is a key linchpin to making everything affordable, from not just housing to what we pay at the food stores, and it's a critical component of it. And that's just one component, though. As far as doubting if the president's going to finish the job, I think he's had his patience has been far greater than I think anybody realized. But now that's going to change real quick if again, this doesn't continue with the Straits of Hormuz being safe, shipping containers coming in and out, and not having to worry about what the Iranian leaders are going to do, because it can't keep going like it's going. And he will finish the job rather quickly. And again, Iran is decimated as it is. And if they want to put the final nails in the coffin, then let them keep doing what they're doing and violating the MOUs that they signed, and we were hopeful that it would be. But it's not going to end well for Iran in any sense.
All right. Well, and I'm curious, just real quick, a yes or no, how long do you think that we should still have our military ships in the Strait?
As long as it takes to make it safe and get the oil moving.
Okay.
It's 20% of our oil of the supply. Yeah. So as long as it takes.
Yeah, global supply, it certainly is. So let's move on to some other issues here. You've introduced a new Worst of the Worst Act, and it would require ICE to establish and maintain a publicly accessible database of criminal illegal aliens that are released from custody. Talk about the significance of this right now.
The significance, Cheryl, is the fact that you look at the criminal element that's coming to this country during open borders of the Biden administration, which Tom Homan and his team is trying to correct. The public needs to have a database that lets us see the criminals who are walking the streets, the criminals who have been let out by sanctuary cities. And how long are we going to put up with the deaths that we hear about, the Laken Rileys and others? But you've talked to any of our law enforcement, it's far greater than that when you look at the assaults and particularly in a lot of the larger cities. But now it's something that we've got to deal with. And sunlight is the best disinfectant. In publishing the names, it makes it real, and it makes it where people can be on guard, because the life and death of Americans has taken a terrible toll because of illegals that have been in this country, and it's got to stop. But my bill would just make it public, have it updated by ICE, and let's just see who they are and where they are. And it's still a matter of unknowns about the ones that got away, that are walking the streets all over America. So this is just the beginning. This should not be contentious at all, Cheryl. This ought to be it ought to be total agreement on this, which I doubt it will be, but it should be. It's just a way to advertise the criminals that are wreaking so much havoc in America.
Now, immigration was a top issue to Americans in 2024. It's shaping up to be a top issue for Americans in 2026 as we go into the midterms. So we're going to be watching your work on that. You've also been calling to reform FISA, stop the warrantless surveillance of Americans. So what changes are you hoping to enact? And I also would like to get your reaction to President Trump's decision earlier this week to pull the confirmation of Jay Clayton on Wednesday. Basically, he blindsided the party, everybody in the U.S. Senate. I wanted to get your take on that as well.
Well, as far as FISA, you had, I think it was 18 or 19 Republicans vote against extending it. And a lot of Republicans who voted against it were in law enforcement at one time, that were following it real closely. Clay Higgins being one, Warren Davidson and others who had been on top of this. But, there's no one that's been a victim of that more than Donald Trump. And, if it can happen then, it can happen now, particularly if a new administration takes over after the Trump administration. I think the president also laid out the fact that he wanted the safe and secure elections that the SAVE Act did, having to be proven that you're a citizen before you vote with a photo ID is not too much to ask. As far as the firing goes, I've heard both sides of it. I don't have the details of why Clayton was fired or why he was removed from the list. I think had to be some valid reasons, and the facts will come out in the coming weeks.
Yeah, no. Well, certainly we know that Bill Pulte is that in that role is another consternation. There's been a lot of drama around that. So, Congressman, so much to watch. It never stops. So it's always great to speak with you, sir. Thank you so much for being with me today.